Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Evolving Practice Podcast. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm Dr. Sean Carey. I'm with my co-host.
Dr. Bill Moss.
And we have a really fun podcast today. We're going to be talking about service over strategy, leading from the heart in a world full of funnels. So one of the trends that we notice in the world is that, especially in terms of business nowadays, everything is so focused on strategy. And we're in this funnels and leads and those things. And there's something really important that's getting lost, which is that person to person connection. And especially that connection from the heart. I think oftentimes in business, people leave that part out. You know, it's almost like they leave their heart for home and their business for the office. But we really want those things to be integrated. Do you have any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, I think the heart is the foundation of what to build upon. And I believe that people in the healing arts, if we want to kind of scale it back, is the driver of people getting into service-based business, I guess you could say, and then expand it to the healing arts is because they have a heart for humanity.
Yeah.
This podcast, we created it for people who are seeking healing, but also many of the people we have on here are to share different healing modalities. And most of the stories that we explore with individuals, people chose those, their vocation, if you will, or their healing arts because they had either a personal experience or they just had an experience that led them to have a heart for humanity and wanted to serve individuals through this vehicle as healing. And, as healing practitioners, there's almost like a polarizing fight that occurs between the heart and the business. And they're both necessary. So I think, with this episode, we want to explore the poles of doing business from the heart and how that can be challenging for practitioners, because the heart comes very much more naturally and organically than the business piece can. And there's a balance between those aspects,
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first got in practice, like we didn't really have any business training before then. A very minimal training on how to actually run a business. You're learning how to be a practitioner of the healing arts. And I think it's pretty much the same whether it's chiropractic or acupuncture, dental school, med school. There's so much involved in actually becoming that. And then the first years in business were pretty tough because I didn't know how to be a business owner. I was never a business owner before. My family wasn't business owners. There was a lot of things I didn't know. But you can get, as you're learning in that, you can get imbalance where it's too much on the business and less about, that genuine person-to-person connection like we're talking about.
Yeah. And it's I remember I started out as an independent contractor where I basically rented, our friend Dan too. I rented space out of his office. And I think I was very naive in believing that the heart would be the carrying factor in that alone in building a business. Right. So, part of me, I looking back, I didn't set myself up for a permanent business when I got into it, which, I have a bunch of experience and lessons that I learned from, I didn't really burn bridges to build that business. I wasn't planning on staying there. So I don't recommend doing that thinking you're going to be super successful. But I also felt like, oh, well, who I am and the heart of service that I want to bring to my clients is going to be enough to build a practice. And that isn't true. And in addition to that, I believe that to some degree, we almost have to venture into the other side, very, not aggressively, but we have to go explore the business world to understand how to function from the heart and yet be systems, procedures driven, profit driven to some degree, because we have to exist in this world, and to serve
Right.
people isn't about giving away all of your energy. And you can't keep pouring from that cup
Right.
forever. So, I definitely experienced that I wasn't going to just be enough by being in the space of, oh, I want to share what I have to offer the world. There's
Yeah.
definitely more to that needs to come through. And yet I think you and I both did go through the experience of where we got super business focused, and
Yeah.
then you kind of lose your heart a little bit when you just explore that avenue. So
Yeah, I think that I think it's something that has to be brought into balance. It almost feels like we're having a conversation about the tree of life right now because it's,
yeah.
you know, or in the world of Kabbalah, this is something that you talk about quite a bit. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, so if you ever have a chance to study Kabbalah with the mystery school, definitely do that. Um, but it is these pieces that need to be brought in balance, because if it's just, all heart, no structure,
Mhm.
uh, you're, there's like, if we just gave to every single person that needed our help all day with no conditions, or no like return, basically, like no energetic return to us, we'd just be flat on, the floor, like exhausted and crumbled within a couple months.
Yeah.
I did that at the beginning. Like, I did my free time. I did at pro bono work once for like a clinic in Boston, or not once, but I did it for this period of time in Boston, and then also for a clinic for veterans. And it was just, I was super depleted because I just wasn't allowing that the energy to return to me as well.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I and because people in early in chiropractic, I'm just speaking from chiropractic, we're almost, people talk about give loving and serving, and
Yeah,
it's so like not, it doesn't feel super integrated. And it's like,
yeah,
if you're in your business mind, you're not actually in your service mindset. But like, that's what preparation is. Like, preparation in my experience, and even looking at somebody, one of the forefathers of chiropractic, or the developer, BJ Palmer, he was very much always developing his understanding of all of these aspects of the profession, from
yeah,
business to science to application of the technique. And I felt like that preparation behind the scenes was so he didn't actually have to worry about any of it when he was in the moment. And I think early on, that description of like, you should just be serving and not thinking about business. And it's like, yes, that is true. Like, when you're placing your hands on somebody, every
right,
healing practitioner
right,
can benefit by the presence of the work that you do. When that becomes easier, one, when you're not thinking about your craft, when
yeah,
you're letting, there's a level of flow and certainty, which is important. And in addition, when you set up and spend time thinking about the business, who a great client is, how to work, how to attract and work with that client, then you're going to be thinking about, so you can really focus on service. It's like, but if
yeah,
you're not taken care of with money, finances, people coming in, keep retention, if you're not accurately or appropriately working with these, it's actually a lot harder to focus on service. So, when
totally.
you say we're talking about the tree of life, is because it's on a pendulum and a pole, and they all matter. All of these
Yeah,
aspects matter to be the best practitioner, including who an individual is.
yeah. This is a bit of a tangent, but I remember reading a business book about Whole Foods, and there
Mhm.
was this time period where Whole Foods was in Texas. Like, at that time, it was just one store, and like, it was very basically a new concept what they were doing. I
Mm,
think it was in Austin, and there was a big flood, and Whole Foods basically got wiped out. So all their inventory was gone. Like, everything had to be closed. They didn't have enough money. Like, it was a, starting fledgling business, didn't have a lot of money in the bank or anything like that. And the owners thought that they had to basically close because there was this devastating flood. Uh, I'm pretty sure it was a flood. If not, it was an event that was similar to that. And they're like, okay, we don't have the money to restock. Like, we're,
mm,
we're done. And they had put everything into this business. And the employees like started picking up brooms, and like, they literally worked for free to help like get the business back on its feet. The
mm,
vendors like offered to not prorate, but basically, like, they would give the supplies and you can pay me back later.
Mm.
And then Whole Foods was able to turn around, and it was like it had this mission of bringing something new to
Mm.
people. This higher quality food. We're talking about the very early stages of the business, but I just thought it was so cool because it was such an embodiment of that, like heart and business working together.
Mm.
Like it's like if it didn't have the heart in it, the employees would have picked up the brooms and wanted us to stay and work through it, without pay. But if if you don't have the business on the back end, like it also isn't going to last.
Yeah. I was having coffee with a friend earlier today, and I feel like this is an appropriate topic, and he's in the financial world. He has a business that basically he grew from starting as a financial planner, working directly, and then going into training teams and people under him. And, he's really worked his way up. So he's handling more. And we were talking about the idea of like, scaling, right?
Yeah.
And so many practitioners, you could even say this in the financial world, and building the relationship. Part of the difficulty is to scale or not to scale, right? As a healing practitioner, this is tough because there's artistry involved. And when you can't deny the artistry of healing work. There's a connection that occurs between the two people. There's a physical art of the application in chiropractic. And there isn't as much reproducibility between individuals as we believe, because you're talking about a multidimensional person, and there's just more to it. It's not an exact science. And, I use a lot of data with the upper cervical world, and I thought it would be easier to reproduce the work that I do. And I find it's actually very challenging to do so.
Yeah.
It's very challenging. And we were talking about like, how do you even scale? Like, what is that? And we were just talking a little bit, just having an open conversation, not having the answers. And the one thing we kind of whittled down to, and I think this describes the heart, is he's working on opening other offices with people. And he's like, I don't want to micromanage those people. So I'm going to run them through values that I embody. And I was like, I really like that, because he's like, if our conversation and communication amongst those offices is surrounding about virtues and values that are consistent and congruent, and that's what we can check in on, not necessarily the way that somebody goes about doing the work, but it's very clear on what are the values of the organization and the people involved. And I was like, oh, that's actually a really good way to extract the heart and find other individuals that are going to adhere to that, to help make it a better business for the employees that are organized or within the organization. But I was like, that's a good way to extract and really make known, first and foremost, to the people involved, what the heart actually is in that business.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's something that people can, get behind, because I think everybody wants to be a part of a purpose or mission. That's one of the things that's really wonderful with healthcare and this work too, the energy work, and with chiropractic, is that it's so easy to connect to the mission behind it. It is easy to connect to that heart piece of it. But at the same time, without the structure, it's like I've seen so many practitioners who become kind of jaded. Like they just try to do it all from the heart without any business structure or understanding. And they end up getting really kind of depleted or burned or different ways, and they'll put like walls up and become jaded. So it's like that. We have to be, you have to have the structure too, and discernment in business, especially.
Absolutely. And even like you said, when you're just serving from the heart, sometimes we lack, going back to the tree of life, like the severity that is necessary in creating boundaries within the healing work and healing practice. And I've seen so many practitioners end up sick because for this alone, like they just wanted to serve. And it's like, well, what about the service to your family too? And what about the service to, the other things that you have in your life that hold it all together? And, service alone isn't just to take care of my chiropractic patients and neglect my responsibilities elsewhere. Service it's kind of it's woven into everything that we do. And, one part of the energy, the piece I love about the energy is when we start to even whittle down what the heck is service, you can do it. It's almost the way we do it, or from the place that we do everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And like connecting people with that best part of themselves, connecting people with their divinity.
Yeah.
Founder Goodney said something in the interview we did with him that I really enjoyed. And he was talking about how, like right now, the world is very polarized. So we
Mm.
have like Putin and Zelensky, Russia, Ukraine. We have Israel, Palestine, the different dynamics in the U.S. and all over. And like he's saying about, all these different people, even the ones that maybe you're being told to hate, like they need love too. In fact, they need
Yeah.
love the most. And if you can, be loving to all, then when you're serving somebody, you're actually serving all. And I
Mm.
really love the way that he shared that.
Yeah.
I think that as a trend, like as a polarity, the world has shifted a little bit too much towards business structure and
Mm.
less, to the heart. Like
Mhm.
it's more of a larger societal shift that we need to kind of come back to, as we would say in the Tree of Life, the middle pillar, to
Yeah.
to bring more more heart energy back into the structure of business.
Yeah. And I think it's really, I know we've all tried this in with
Yeah.
social media and advertising and the digital world, is no matter how much you want that to come through, it's still, we're missing a dimension. We're missing a dimension of like this human energy. That's the presence is so important. And
Yeah.
that's one of the foundations I always go back to. My foundation of building the practice and continuing to build the practice is happens through relationships and in-person endeavors, because I think much more sense can be made when you're in the presence of another. And
Yeah.
I don't even like, I remember having a coach who wanted the doctor to like get on the phone call with everyone, and like I don't love phone interaction. I just never loved it.
Right.
I get it, you can get better at it. I do it. I talk to clients. I just feel like you can communicate more. And what I mean by that is when you're in the presence of self with the energy of it, and there's
Yeah.
greater understanding that always happens, and there's a greater relationship that comes from that. And we literally have an electromagnetic field with our heart
Right.
that allows us to sense and perceive. So as far as a strategy is concerned, I think it's important to remember, no matter how fancy your digital profile is or how it works, it's like in the healing work, the biggest way to cultivate a service relationship is to be in the presence. In that presence,
Yeah.
you need to be there when we're there, right? You can't
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
elsewhere. And that's what we were
Absolutely.
talking about earlier. So at the end of the day, I think I have found that exploring all of these ways to attract, quote, new clients and people to work with, the most foundational when you're talking about energy is to be in the energy of another.
Yeah. And how that as healers, we do have that ability to like uplift people.
Mm,
And, everybody that's coming into my office, I'm working on uplifting them, and
yeah.
and supporting them as they walk through the door.
Mm,
And yeah, it's that can be, I think, and should be really a natural flow of business.
mhm.
It's like where you're getting to serve another, to do that. And how nice would it be if that was how it was in hospitals, or that was it was
Mm,
with lawn care and these different things, is people
mhm.
just had that attitude.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do my job, and I'm also going to uplift everything that I come in contact with here.
Yeah. And when you're our first, I would say, philosophical deep dive in chiropractic, where, the dynamic essentials, which was a group we
Yeah.
were both involved in, I think, in Life University, where I went to, it was founded on, give, love, and serve out of your own,
Yeah.
own abundance without the expectation of return. And they called that lasting purpose. And, I think the foundation of that is really, really good. And that was kind of the driving message of dynamic essentials. I think that was Sid Williams who coined that, saw the beauty of service through chiropractic and wanted to create a vision that was just beyond the mechanistic
Yeah.
world view of healthcare or chiropractic. And that's a beautiful coined understanding and virtue to operate from. And that always resonated with me, because it starts he even had a book. I don't know if you've ever read it. The Road to Success Starts in the Heart.
Yeah, I have it on my desk out at the office.
It's maybe my favorite chiropractic philosophy. Well, I don't even know if you'd call it philosophy book. It was one of my favorite books written by a chiropractor.
Yeah.
I guess you could say. And it really is, even everything that he prepared people to do was to start with the heart, and then have the systems in place that allowed you to flow and operate from that. And when we talk about the energy work, like the next level for me was it doesn't just happen through the mind. The preparation of the heart doesn't just happen from this mental faculty that like, oh, I'm going to affirm to myself that I can be this way. It's like, we're going to actually have tools to bring forward that essence. And in the presence, that essence becomes even more powerful and impactful. And I can only say that from the experience that I've had by using the tools, that I see that all the time, right? That's not like through the mind, like, oh no, it just happens. It really, you can experience it, feel it, and you're caring for people in a new way when you're supporting them with your energy in a new way.
I love that. I didn't go to Life University. I went to Park University, and it was started by a man named Jim Parker, and there was like the Parker principles. So it was just kind of like some core values that he had, and the first one was loving service is my first technique, which is very similar.
Yeah.
But I was a huge student of Sid Williams too. I didn't get to meet him while he was alive, but like he had this book. I believe the book was called Lasting Purpose, and he talks about his experience where he was selling. He's working as a salesman. I think he was a student, and he was selling this wherever cookware.
Yeah.
And he tells this funny story where there's his wife. Her name's Nell, and she's going and selling this wherever cookware, which is a thing at that time. And she was like having some success with it, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to be even more successful." He was a great athlete and great competitor, and he was having like no sales. Nobody wanted him. So he spent all this money on cookware and couldn't sell it, which was the core of the business. And then after another denial, rejection, he had these old shoes, and his shoe like busted open during like the middle of his presentation with somebody. And he had this moment where it was like, it just like opened him. There's like a spiritual opening. He looks down at his shoe that's all busted open, and it just shifted something within him where he just like fell in love with the moment, or he fell in love with love, or there was a way that he just went from being like having kind of a normal thought process to just flowing the energy of love. Just something that completely snapped him out of like current reality to a state of love.
Yeah.
And immediately like the person changed, where they changed their attitude about it and ended up wanting to buy the cookware from him, and started having this huge success by aligning with that energy of love.
Yeah.
And I remember before the mystery school, I was I had read these different stories. I read, Sid Williams and Jim Parker and Clarence Consted and these people, BJ Palmer, these people who I believe tapped into these like spiritual states, if you will. Maybe not a state, but like a frequency, a way of being that really brought that through. And I was like, oh, I really want to do that too. And I was trying to do it more from like a mental perspective. And maybe I'd touch on it here or there, and I'd kind of be able to connect with it for a bit, but it wasn't something that was really sustained. And then with the modern mystery school, when I got exposed to that, I was like, oh, that actually is what creates the shifts to have those higher states unlocked basically permanently.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that like with the modern mystery school, there's different initiations that are available to people. There's something called Healers Academy, where the whole thing is just about opening your heart like this. And so it's just like, that's really like, I wish all chiropractors could, and all healing practitioners could go do that, because of what it would do as far as opening their heart, so that they could be in that state of serving on a multidimensional level.
Yeah, I think one of the key words for me, what you said, was the sustainability. Kind of definitely developed through this totally outside the box way of kind of existing. And I know for myself, when we're talking about service, I feel like most of my life was focused, prior to doing anything through the modern mystery school, was focused on getting riled up that I could be the person to be of highest service and handle everything that came at me.
Yeah.
And every seminar I attended or business function was to like prop me up with more self-worth that I could handle what I was
Yeah.
going to go face. And I think that's where the world is in many ways, is like by looking at all of what you are and others that have made success in business and in life, is they're trying to convince you that you can be like them through the mind first, which I
Right.
get it. We live in a mental world and that is important, but we don't realize the way energy supports the mind and
Right.
the way it supports us. And that is so much more sustainable to me, where things start to happen in a more automatic way that I wasn't expecting or, fully aware of how that was going to look, but it's a lot easier to do. And I think it makes some of the um, accomplishments that people look for in business, it kind of helps you have different perception, where it's like,
Mm.
success means, oh, I came from the heart, therefore the energetic measure is I have more money, and my service is defined by my money. And when I would say live in a different place where we have this understanding, and it's very important, and abundance is very important. And if somebody
Right.
wants to learn more about that, they should come to join us with the Building Wealth class in 2 weeks, or on March
Yeah.
29th in the Reading area. But accomplishment and abundance and fulfillment is it's a more of a multidimensional understanding. And that happens when we actually experience that, right?
Yeah.
It's not through the same lens.
Right. Yeah. It's this connection. When we're talking about it metaphysically, like there's a connection to a state of flow.
Mm.
The state of flow, I think, is most fluid, most easily accessed actually through service.
Mm.
So, like if I'm in, well, let's say I'm in a mood about something.
Yeah.
Usually, the quickest way for me to get like out of that mood is actually to just not be focusing on myself anymore and focusing on helping somebody else,
Yeah.
and then that redirects it, and we're back in the flow. And yeah, that class goes so deeply into the flow of abundance.
That's such a key though. That's probably the ultimate key, is like we do live in a world that projects like this is how you take care of yourself. Take care of yourself,
Yeah.
self, 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 self. And
Yeah.
our teachers, our master teachers always redirect us back to the idea of like, you want to progress the most, you want to understand the self the most, you want to make the biggest leaps. It's not going to happen in a classroom. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen with learning new information. It actually happens the most when you serve another person. And I have always found that to be true.
Yeah.
And that's where like the skipping of the steps never, now it doesn't make sense to me. And I think the world of business sells you on like, follow me so you can skip all these steps and have a
Right.
faster, quicker life. And it's like through service, you make the biggest jumps and learn the most lessons,
Yeah.
uh, in a way that no other classroom can actually teach you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a completely different reality that you start stepping into as far as service being the focus in that way. And
Mm.
it frees you from this, like there's so many, uh, the word like narcissist is used
Mm.
so often in today's, like everybody just labels as narcissist.
Yeah.
I think human beings can like just in general like be very narcissistic. It's all about me all the time. Like I have a dog and she's so funny because it's all about her all the time.
Yeah.
She has that psychology of like a 5-year-old.
Mhm.
But it is like a mode that as humans we can fall into. It's just everybody's susceptible to that. Not
Mm.
just a person's ex who they deem a narcissist.
Yeah.
Right. It's like too much focus on the self and not enough focus on what others around us need.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that if you're just focusing on the self all the time and how you feel, think what you're thinking,
Yeah.
what you're doing, that can lead to so much suffering. And,
Mhm.
I've noticed days, some of my most difficult times in my life, like I was the most focused in my practice or working
Yeah.
with other people. And then I always came out of that with a new perspective of what was happening because I put all of my baggage aside
Yeah.
anyway. And that's the hardest thing, I think, with support staff or other doctors and stuff. We know as initiates and working very much within a service level, we know the value in getting out of your own way, even
Yeah.
in the harder times, and going and working and being with the people before you. My wife was, hospitalized with pneumonia, and it was a whole thing, but I didn't want to not do any service during that week. I had to serve her and take care of her, but I also knew from experience that helping other people would help me help her better, and it would help
Yeah.
me help my family better. So
Yeah.
it's like it lessened. I took some more time, but I still understood the value of me working with people and how that could support others
Yeah.
along that difficult journey. Because if I'm just wallowing in my own thoughts on my downtime, then I can, I'm going to be more sorrowful. I'm going to be more in the self. And
Yeah.
the greatest way is to like kind of move that energy of love and support and take care of others, in service to them and in service to her.
Yeah. I think like if there was a study done, as far as like levels of happiness, the people who did, the most service, I think would be the most happy for sure. It
Yeah.
just, it does something for the human soul and frees us of the prison of the mind and
Yeah.
ego.
It's
'Cause-
It's kind of like when we're saying this, I was like, this is like a novel self-development program. Like we're
yeah,
like, service to others is the true path to like self-mastery,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
You know?
yeah, yeah, and people like they need a way to do that,
Mhm.
and it not just on a mental level. So it's like we all have to share what our gifts are.
Mm.
With the mystery school, we have empower the self, and like here's kind of where people are trained as far as how to start bringing light to other people
Mhm.
in a way that can really brighten up their energy too. Uh, and with that being said, one of the ways that somebody can just start with today is just smiling,
Mm.
expressing your gratitude for other people, and
Mm.
letting letting them know that you appreciate them, because that will just it's just going to bring more positive energy to them,
Mm.
and support them, which will in turn bring more positive energy to you.
Yeah. And there, I think what people don't understand about a path of progression is there's, almost with anything, there is this idea that starts with the self, like service to self, even
Yeah,
in the path of progression, to know thyself, it starts with, the self, and then you serve another, and which can lead to greater service to serve humanity. I mean, that's like baby steps. Like many people have the desire to quote, serve humanity, and then understanding with service to the self how it affects service to humanity. These
yeah,
are kind of the levels of the container to grow to mastery, right, within that progression. And that's important in anything. There's usually that level of development where you're like, I'm just
yeah,
kind of trying to figure out how to become aware and cognizant of who I am and what I'm even doing. And then we start to get some legs and we serve another person, and then we make bigger, and we're like, oh, I see how humanity works or an individuals work. So maybe I can serve on a bigger level, and that we can grow into that container. Um,
yeah.
and it starts with the heart. It doesn't start with a business system.
Right, right. It's funny how we started the conversation, because it was when we started the conversation, it was really like kind of the importance of the service to the self, right? Like what
Yeah.
happens if you don't have that?
Hmm.
And then there is that point where it's like, okay, you kind of have that piece down. Like maybe you're somebody who's been in practice for a while. Maybe you're a psychologist or dentist or chiropractor, and you're comfortable, and that's great. But there is that next level to go to. Like the service itself has been done. There's serving others
Mm.
through the work, but then there's also this higher level to bring in that higher level of spirit that's attainable.
Mm. Mm. And I think that you even talked about on a global scale, like, and I found her good need the way he kind of was the understanding of, okay, like people get mad about the current situation, and I think
Yeah,
that's coming out of the sense that like I want a better world for humanity, and yet the expression of how people are doing it is also from the same angle of like I'm hating. Right?
totally.
So
Yeah,
when we can realize like the desire that I want humanity to have a greater level of love and compassion for each other, it's coming from the right place. It's just the reflection of how we're doing it is just spewing more hate to a certain group because they're not actually doing it in the way that I perceive should be happening and occurring. And most of us haven't dealt with actually that level of understanding because we're not even in that place. So there lacks that humility. And I think the further we go from the heart of service, you have humility to know that everyone's on a grayscale journey, and it's not the same at each point along the way. So there becomes this compassion that is so needed for when we judge our fellow practitioners and when we look at who are we working with. They're a complete package of their life, which is very complex. So having that humility allows us to be from the heart when we're working with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the part of the training that we've both gone through too, is that, it's part of the training with the mystery school is to, never turn people away. I mean, like people have to exchange. It's not like we have, like we're being forced to work for somebody who's rude or belittling or anything like that. But it's like, let's say somebody was like I was a huge Red Sox fan. It was just like almost that was my religion, which is I'm not. It's just a funny example. This was like a Yankees.
Let's pretend you are though, because you're from Boston area. Let's pretend. Can you talk in the accent too?
That's what I got there. I can't do the accent so well, but this like then I have to take care of this damn Yankee fan, and who hates the Red Sox.
Yeah,
we would it's like we have to serve that person. Well, we don't want to hold anybody outside of this compassion and being able to help them. Like we want to be willing to help all, whether it's that person or whether it's Putin or whether it's Zelensky or whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. We want to be able to really, like, if any of those people are in front of us and we have the opportunity to help them, we want to be in that place where you are just willing to help them with an open heart.
Yeah. That's actually a really good mental frame and exercise is like, could you, like, if you wouldn't be willing to like attempt to work with somebody that drives you crazy, you have healing to do, like a lot.
Right?
If you're not willing to sit in that space and, work with that person, then you've got a long ways to go, right? And I know I'm just saying this because I've done this. Like when you're saying that, it's like we've all said, oh, if that person came to see me, would I be able to take care of them? And I mean, there's a lot of levels in that question. It's a really good question as a practitioner. It's like, am I actually prepared to work with somebody of this capacity? Am I certain enough to lead them in my world? Can I love them? There's a lot of ways that question is just so powerful in understanding like where you are as a healer in your service mindset is like, can you put all things aside and still do your job to serve that person? It's a good question. I like that.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it'll show you where your heart is closed off too. Because it's like, we think it's like, oh, okay, these like, I remember the political signs. It's like hate has no place here. There's one that's kind of like on near my house on the way to the highway. So
there's a lot of those up in New England. I've seen them.
Yeah, but it's okay. Like, well, it's the wrong energy, right? It's like you get what you're trying to say, but it's like also it's like the capitalized word is hate, not love. Like it's the wrong energy is being broadcast on this billboard, or whatever. Not a billboard, but like a yard sign. So, we want to be conscious with the energies that we're putting out. And if you're, if you're not having an open heart towards a certain person, we want to be able to flow love to that person too. They need it.
Yeah.
And you need
it. This is where business can get hard, right? Like this is the fine thing because we know that people make decisions more out of avoiding fear and pain, right? Than pleasure and positivity and stuff. And advertisers, marketers, everyone knows that. And when you're in a service-based business, when you whittle it down, you don't actually want to come from that place. Like I'm sure you felt this way when we got into chiropractic, the profession of chiropractic years ago. There were so many models that we'd call like scare care, and they'd basically like amplify everything that was wrong with someone's spine to like get them to make a good decision. And like, I never could do that. Like, I can be honest with people and be like, okay, this is very worn out. There's, it's more significant than say somebody else, but like to scare them and put them in a state. I remember Arnaud Brenier saying like, he who motivates with fear ceases to be moral. And I like love that quote, like he who motivates with the fear ceases to be moral. And, I could probably like whittle that down. Like, do I fully believe that? But I think the essence or the energy of that is like, if you're scaring with your advertising or your business to like do this with somebody, and people would be like, if they had cancer, would you make it a big deal? If they have a subluxation? And it's like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but when we put people in that state with our business advertising marketing models, it doesn't feel like it's coming from the heart at the start of that relationship.
I think there's a really like delicate balance here. Like one of the groups I was a part of with chiropractic, I was on the board of for a while, was the Massachusetts Alliance for Chiropractic Philosophy. We brought all sorts of different chiropractors, like the best in the profession, to speak at this group. It was one of the oldest running groups in the country. And so I got to spend a lot of time with different chiropractic college presidents and international teachers and that type of thing. And the motto of the group, which I loved, was that if you have a truth, it must be given with love, or the message and messenger will be rejected. And like when I'm presenting care with people, sometimes it's like I don't consider it scare care, but I will also be very direct. It's like, here's where you are. This is this process to get to where you are. The discs have worn away significantly. There's significant arthritis. There's bone spurs. Maybe it took 25 years for you to get here. Like, here's what we got to do. My best, what I believe will give you the best possible outcome long term. Because obviously what's currently happening is not working for you. So, but it does have to be done so, I think, directly with the energy of hope and not instilling fear. And it's a really delicate balance.
Yeah, it is. And I think, I noticed early in care, like I worked in an office that recommended so many more visits than I felt was really necessary. So that was always like difficult. It's like, well, where's the integrity? I'm going to convince myself that people need more of this, but I don't really. And it's like what I realized for myself early in, this was when I worked in someone else's office. I remember every person that I actually felt like they needed the visits that I was recommending would sign up for care. But the other ones that it was like, well, this is the minimum level, or this is what we're recommending. Like it was missed because, and I could spend time convincing myself that no, that was the right thing. Or I could just be like, go do it my way, when it was honesty. And when I explored what was the best recommendations, there's something to that, where the reality is when you're giving somebody your best recommendations and it's congruent with what you're saying in that process is going to be, well, then that you're in integrity and it works. Like you said, there is an honesty to being like, this is more serious. This is more significant. And yet this is going to get us the best result and restore the most amount of hope. And it's the best I can do. And that works. So it is a really fine line that needs to be explored for the self to really come into agreement. I think it's a cop out sometimes where people are like, well, I'm serving this and I can do it in any way possible. But I'm at the end of the day, I'm serving because I'm doing quote this, and I'm serving the chiropractic. So it doesn't matter. And it's like, well, it's.
You always got to do what's best for the person in front of you, I think. And it's it doesn't mean we have to be their financial planner or like in charge of their schedule or whatever. Like, but it's like we have to like base our recommendations around what's best for the person. I know one mistake I made at the beginning of practice for a while was that I was kind of under recommending care. Like I would under recommend the care and the time, which what ended up happening is people didn't get the best results they could get because it was, I was putting unfair expectations of myself and their body. It was just, I don't know if it was a lack of confidence then or just a lack of understanding as being a new practitioner. So in time, I've extended not so much the amount of visits, but like the length of time that I have somebody basically in this healing container of care,
Yeah.
which to me feels really good as far as helping people have that time for the body to stabilize, to be in that healing mode, if you will.
Yeah. 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 I think there's learning in that. And there's sometimes people are really, really acute, and
Yeah,
I'll just do the initial intensive with
yeah,
them because they can't even, maybe
yeah,
they need like double the recommendations, but
yeah.
like I can see where they're not even, we can't have that conversation yet. We
Right,
need
right.
to just, you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like, so,
yeah,
um, and I think that's part of what I love about practice, and
totally.
is I think there is a unique understanding that comes about from the
Yeah,
more you serve, the more you understand. It's kind of like the subtleties in the energy work, is like the more you serve, the more you look at somebody and you're like, well, you could really benefit from the full spirit activation. Oh, you're totally ready for empower thyself. I think what we need is a raw healing. Like, you start to
yeah,
see these subtle differences in people's energy that help you direct them to maybe a quote frequency change in chiropractic, of like, maybe we should only check you this often now.
yeah, yeah,
And then in the healing world, it's like, you're really due to like, um, have some
yeah,
work so we can move to the next level.
yeah,
And that's the beauty of, the more that you do it, it goes from theory to wisdom and
yeah.
understanding.
Yeah, and there's this art to it. And
Yeah.
like some of the difficult chiropractic cases I have, because some of those cases, like we get them in, and I'm like, I'm not sure I can actually help this person. It's the
Yeah.
case is so difficult, or so there's so much degeneration, so much trauma. We might do like a test,
Mhm.
do a test for a couple months to see if we can get some improvement, and then if that is the case, then we'll continue for longer. But I just want to see that there'll be a positive change within that time,
Yeah. I
and
agree.
yeah, but and with the healing work, it's also like it's one thing that I do love about the healing work is that it tends to be about the energy healing work is that it can often be less about symptoms for people and more
Mhm.
about kind of awakening.
Yeah.
That's a process that gets to happen in the person's own time. So we can like kind of help catalyze the process. We do like a life activation session or that, and a full spirit activation, or maybe the person's ready for empower themselves. We do those things, and it catalyzes this whole other journey for the person.
Mhm.
And then it's like we get to kind of design the plan based on what they need
Mhm. Yeah.
and want and are willing to do, because there's always more. There's so much that's available. It's just also like, does a person want that? Are they willing to commit to
Mhm.
the inner work too? Because it's not just a matter of like us doing it. If somebody wants the full health available to them, for example, it's not just chiropractic care. They're
Yeah.
going to need to nutrition and sleep and
Yeah.
all those other components.
Yeah. Yeah. And does the chiropractic influence the other things, and the other things influence the chiropractic? Well, like, of course they do. Like,
Right.
we're a complex
Right.
individual. All of it matters, right?
Yeah.
Even our food intake affects our energy, it affects our chi,
Yeah.
it affects our life force, which it affects our aura. Like, there's, so that whole separate model of the other things don't matter it's incomplete. So
Yeah.
um I think part of service is, understanding what you provide, how you
Yeah.
provide it, and who you're providing it to. And that helps make a more, it just helps you have more experience so you can be a better servant. And, I feel like I'm finally at the last couple of years where there's much more understanding in everything that we do. Um,
Yeah.
in the totality of like a human being and what they go through, right? Like, from
Right.
a healthcare perspective, even
Yeah.
something that's important is like, the long enough you work with people, like, they're going to pass away. I've had many more this past year kind of have serious illnesses, and also pass away. And it's like, part of the service is understanding that you're not going to fix everything so they can live a physical existence forever. And I
Yeah.
think, under knowing that, it allows you to just do your best in every moment to help people that grow with you over the years go through those challenges.
I think that's so well said.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. So service is, I don't know if we've done a whole episode on service. We've touched upon it, but I feel like there's a lot here to, continue to grow. And, at the end of the day, the the heart is best experienced in person. And, I know one of our goals this year is to do more in-person events and build
Yeah.
towards that. Working together, you and I, we're all both of us are going to be at the Building Wealth class that's taking place in Reading. That's a great event. It's coming up. So maybe we'll include the link again if you'd like to join us. There's 0 prerequisites to experience that with Eric Thompson, who's going to be teaching. And then later in the year, we'll probably do some events as well that we can connect in person, because that's the best way to serve from the heart, is to actually be in the presence of another.
Yeah. And to be able to make this, not just a mental sharing, but to actually share those energies in person.
Amazing. So let's do it. I look forward to doing that later in the year. I'm going to keep that at the forefront. And I think this episode can be a motivating factor for us to do more in-person stuff, because, human connection is never going to go out of style.
Absolutely. So well said. And thank you all so much for joining us. Please like, please subscribe, please share. Let us know your thoughts too.